This is Gene Palubicki from Angelcorpse, and you're listening to The Ritual with Lady Death on Metal Messiah Radio.
Hello everybody, this is Lady Death and you are listening to The Ritual on Metal Messiah Radio. Today the guitarist of the American black death metal band Angelcorpse, Gene Palubicki, is joining us to talk about the band, their news and more. First of all, let me thank you for giving us a bit of your time, Gene, and welcome to my show.
Thanks a lot for the support.
Alright, so Angelcorpse is an American black death metal band who was formed originally in Kansas City, Missouri back in 1995, then relocated to Tampa, Florida after 3 years. You split up for the first time after the release of your third album back in 1999, and then you got back together in 2006 to release your fourth album of Lucifer and Lightning in 2007. 2009, you announced your second disbandment, citing musical differences as the reason. And here we go, you got back together again after 6 years. Can you please explain to us what happened exactly so you disbanded and how you got back together and what is the current lineup?
Back in 2009, it was around the period after we'd finished in a European tour that we did in 2008. Actually, prior to that, in 2007, we did some about a 3-week tour in the U.S. with Watain and Negative Plane, and then the 2008 European tour with Revenge and Archon and Faustus. And then later in 2008, we also did about a week's worth of shows out on the West Coast. Some bands like Cemetery, Urn, Ares Kingdom, and Gospel of the Horrors. And then after we came back from that, we started to develop what we were planning to do next. Whether or not it was going to be a full-length album, an EP, a mini CD, or another full-length, or what we wanted to do. And the way things were developing with the band at that time after those shows opened up a lot of different possibilities and directions that we could go in a business way, in an artistic way. A lot of things were developing that we could kind of decide where we wanted to go, and that's sort of where problems had began, where we couldn't really decide at the time exactly what it was we wanted to do, and there was a lot of back and forth for a while. So because of that indecision and uncertainty, we decided to let it go again that second time at that point. And it wasn't the happiest decision that we could make, but because of the indecision, we just felt that it was better to just to put it away at that time.
So how did you get back together again?
Well, now flash forward to, say, maybe about 2014 or even earlier parts of this year. There were the plans that we had to do the reissues of the first 3 albums on LP again, because they've been out of print for many years. Yeah. And with the announcement of those LP reissues coming out, and then after they came out several months ago, a lot of people internationally have been asking us if we were going to do any kind of shows or anything to go along with that. I mean, originally we'd kind of dodged the idea of doing any kind of like a quote-unquote reunion type tour or anything like that. But, being that it was coming up on the 20th anniversary of the band's inception or existence, we felt that if we were ever going to do something like this, that now would be the time to do it. So through a little bit of discussion, we picked a selection of songs from all the old albums, all 4 of the old albums, including of Lucifer and Lightning, and we put together a set that would, for the 2016 live events that we plan, there'll be a mixture of everything that we'd ever done from previously.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll see where it goes forward from that.
Uh-huh. All right, and what is the current lineup? Is it the original lineup now?
Well, the original lineup really has always basically been myself and then Pete Helmkamp.
Yeah.
And we've had a series of drummers over the years, even from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And the current lineup is myself, Pete, and Ronnie Palmer, who is also the drummer with me in our other current band, Perdition Temple.
Okay.
It's just the three of us.
Uh-huh. All right, so I read lots of reviews about your albums, and I noticed that your album Exterminate, which was released back in 1998, had the best reviews. So comparing it to the latest album you released of Lucifer and Lightning in 2007, lots said it was different. For example, the guitars sound were like more muddy in the album, and the drumming doesn't sound so focused and put together as in Exterminate. What do you think about that? Do you think people's opinions do matter, and how can you compare these two albums?
Exterminate has always kind of seemed to be the middle ground album for people's favorite from the band. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was the album that came out and pretty much made the band internationally known on a more widespread level.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people look back to that and somewhat maybe judge every other album that we did after that based off of the experience that they had with the Exterminate album.
Yeah.
And I guess if there were any detractors to even maybe the Inexorable or the Lucifer and Lightning album, it's sort of a thing where after a band like Slayer did the Rain and Blood album, everybody expected that whatever that band should do next would be like a Rain and Blood Part 2, Part 3, etc.
Yeah.
And when they didn't get that, there were detractors.
Yeah.
Like even when that band put out the South of Heaven album, there were people that were like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
This isn't what we were expecting.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time we came back around in 2006 and did the release of the album of Lucifer and Lightning in 2007, to me, it was exactly what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it may have not have been what people were expecting us to do. They might have been expecting an Inexorable Part 2.
Yeah.
And that wasn't what I had intended. I wasn't looking to just repeat myself and do the same kind of album again. And that was exactly the songs the way that they were supposed to be for that album at that period of time.
Uh-huh.
Because that's where I was at.
Mm-hmm.
And people can all have their opinions. It really doesn't make any difference to me. But, historically what I've seen, the way people have reacted to, any other type of bands that kind of have a real definitive album,
mm-hmm.
that everything else the band does after that seems to be judged based on the quote-unquote rules of that previous album.
Yeah.
And I don't care about that. It's whatever I write and whatever comes out of me at the time that I'm doing new music is exactly what it's intended to be. And I'm not just going to pander to the crowd and do what anyone else is going to tell me that is right or is the best thing to do. It's going to be exactly what I want to do at the time I want to do it, and that's what's going to be presented. Palubicki from Angelcorpse, and you're listening to The Ritual with Lady Death on Metal Messiah Radio.
All right. So, usually every band has a message behind the music to deliver for the listener. What is the main message behind your songs in general?
Well, a lot of it's pretty straightforward in the lyrics. All the lyrics for the albums were always written by Pete.
Yeah.
And he could probably explain most of those better than I could, but subject matter, has always been the same. I mean, really militant type topics,
Mm-hmm.
Extremism of, religious factions or irreligious factions,
Yeah.
and just other topics of interest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anything that we found to be an interesting subject usually found some way to make it into the lyrics.
Uh-huh. All right. So, after releasing your first demo back in 1996, you directly got signed by Osmos Productions, and you released your first full-length album, Hammer of Gods, in the same year. You were a new band back then. How come you got signed in a short time, and it was only after one release of one demo?
Looking back on it, I think it had a lot to do with that period of time, because in the mid to the late 90s, there started to be a real stagnation in the death metal sound.
Yeah.
Because that was right after a period where there was a short time where some of the major labels, at least here in the United States, decided to dabble with death metal music.
Mm-hmm.
There were some releases that had come out even on, say, Warner Brothers records, or Sony Music had put out a bunch of titles, and they were hoping that they were going to, get gold out of that.
Yeah.
So it made a lot of bands start to shift to like a really cleaned up type of sound, something that was more commercially palatable, and it made a lot of people bored and kind of felt alienated from what the sound of death metal had been identified with from the late 80s going into the first few years of the 90s.
Yeah.
It started to become, almost something that you could hear on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And bands were recording their albums in a way and new music in a way that was aimed at being listenable in a commercial market.
Yeah.
And when we made our demo, we did it on a 4-track, playing in the basement of the house where we lived, and we did exactly what we wanted to do. I mean, the kind of music that we were listening to, we were into, really out of control sounds like some Australian bands like Best of Warlust at the time.
Yeah.
And we liked that because it was really explosive. It reminded us of like the explosive sounds of old bands like Bathory, but it was current. It was something new. So when we did our demo, it was completely fine for us to have a sound that was really explosive, maybe not so clear, maybe not so perfect in its recording quality. And that's what we put out. That's what we decided we wanted to present. And I think that that's what made it get noticed, is because it was so adverse to what was popularly accepted at that period of time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what made the speed of things begin the way they did for the band.
So, as I saw on your Facebook page, you have lots of plans for 2016 and more for 2017. Can you tell us about these plans? And it has been like 9 years. Will you be releasing a new album, for example, or anything?
As far as any new music, we've talked about the idea. We haven't decided on what may or may not happen yet.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a topic for discussion at this point.
Yeah.
And as far as the live events, there's been several that have been announced. For the United States, there's the Maryland Death Fest. Yeah. There's also the California Death Fest.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be several other shows announced for the United States as well in all different regions of the U.S. So really no part of the United States will be left out.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Europe, so far we've got announced the Partisan Festival in August, followed a day later by the Brutal Assault Festival in Czech Republic. And there'll also be about an 8 or 9 date mini tour in Europe that'll take place sometime in September. And there's even some other European and Scandinavian events being developed.
Awesome.
And then also, so the way we're spreading everything out, and since we all have day jobs,
yeah,
we're limited. We can't go out and do like a 5 or 6 week tour or something like that. We like we might have been able to do when we were still in our 20s.
Yeah.
So we're really put into a situation where we will have to roll things over into 2017.
Mm-hmm.
We've already got ideas set for Pacific regions, such as Australia,
awesome. Yeah.
Asia, South America will also be moved over into 2017, and then likely that same when we go into 2017 as well, I'm sure we'll have other repeat visits for other regions of the world as well.
That's great. So, you've been on stage for more than 20 years. You toured Europe and the US with a lot of bands such as Immortal, Chris June, Watain, and more. Is there any differences between the scene in Europe and the US, and did you notice any change in the scene in general across all this time?
Over all of the years, there's differences between anywhere that we've ever done shows or places that we've visited. I mean, there's just varied tastes, varied fan bases. Myself, I've never really considered myself part of any particular area's scene. It's not like I've ever considered Angelcorpse to be a Florida band or even a Kansas City band.
Yeah.
I've always just considered Angelcorpse as a band that's a worldwide band, an international band. So to me, the scene, I look at it as a whole, as a global thing.
Yeah.
I've always tried to think globally with everything that I'm doing, and not just try to be part of any particular region.
Mm-hmm. You aren't only a guitarist in Angelcorpse, you play in 2 other bands as well, Perdition Temple and Blasphemic Cruelty. I checked these 2 bands out and they aren't bad at all. Your way of composing changed from band to another. Is it hard to be in 3 bands? Because I know being in one band is sometimes really tough.
Well, when Angelcorpse stopped back in 2009, I continued directly into reworking the material that I had at that point into the new band, which was Perdition Temple.
Yeah.
And obviously I wasn't just going to try to make some new version of Angelcorpse with different members.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided on a new band name that would be more suited to me personally, and ideas that ended with Angelcorpse at that point became the new direction that I was going with what became the Perdition Temple material, and has up till this point as well, and will continue.
Yeah.
So there is a difference because of the fact that it's entirely done by me. The lyrics are all done by me, and even in the case of some of the recordings, the vocals were done by me.
Yeah.
So there is a distinct difference. It's maybe a little bit more experimental, maybe a bit more advanced in the guitar work, something that's just more suited to me individually. So there's a difference between it and the previous band, Angelcorpse, even though that it came from it.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to something like Blasphemic Cruelty, which also I'd written all the lyrics, the thing I wanted to do there was have music that was more based on traditional heavy metal type patternings of things you might have expected from bands from between maybe about 84 through about 87, when speed metal bands were really pushing the limits, but the music was still really rooted in traditional hard rock, heavy metal type patterns that had come out of even the early 70s up until the 80s. Mm-hmm. But just taken to where I figured it might have gone, if that type of styling of bands doing speed metal might have carried into, say into the 90s or even into modern times. It's my interpretation of it.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more of a classically rooted death or speed metal type project, which, I mean, when you really listen to the music, aside from the fact that it's got the fast drums, mm-hmm. the music itself has got a little bit more that you could identify from old bands from going back 30 years ago. Palubicki from Angelcorpse, and you're listening to The Ritual with Lady Death on Metal Messiah Radio.
Are you from those musicians who say that the metal scene in general is dying nowadays?
I don't think so at all. I just think it's become a little bit more difficult to find the quality bands. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no lessening of quality bands. It's just that there's more of a flood of bands that are really just bedroom projects that are just fighting for space, and they get in the way of the quality projects. Because, I mean, I hear albums all the time that I think are great, but I also get inundated with a flood of releases and links and all manner of other sorts of exposure to a lot of stuff that maybe I don't like. Mm-hmm. Whereas 15, 20 years ago, without all of the internet access that people have nowadays to be able to hear everything, the only reason you ever heard of bands previously was word of mouth. Mm-hmm. And if people were talking about something that was good, eventually it reached your ears, and then you'd hear it. You'd be exposed to it. Now, you just turn on Facebook, turn on YouTube, and within a day's time, there's 30 other bands you could hear, probably one or two of which might be worth your time, but then you're going to have the other 18 that are a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
And the effect that can have on people is it can make them feel that there's a deterioration of the musical style as a whole, but that's not true. You just have to look a little bit harder and be a little bit more choosy for what you like.
Yeah.
And then focus on the things you like, and then you won't have to worry about the ones that you don't like, and you can just tune them out. So I think it's false. I don't think anything's going away or getting worse. It's just that there's so much exposure for the stuff that isn't really worth anyone's time.
Yeah. So, what can you say to the new metal generation, since you are into the true metal, and it is sad to see how some crap metal waves are spreading like very fast, and most of the good ones aren't really noticeable.
I think the rules still apply the same now as they ever have. You have to trust in the material that you're doing. You have to write the music that you actually enjoy doing and that you're going to be happy with years after it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
There's not some trick way to be able to get your stuff out there and get ahead of the herd or anything like that. You just have to put in your time, dedicate yourself to making the best material that you can, and then put it out. And at that point, it's up for the world to decide whether or not you're worth it.
Yeah. So
you won't be able to trick anyone into believing that your stuff is any better than anyone else's. It's up for them to make that decision, and the only thing you can do is present the best that you're able to do.
Yeah.
And every time I do new music, I don't try to come up with a formula that I think is going to be like the new success story or something like that.
Yeah.
I just try to do whatever I think is going to be the best new songs of material from me that is a step, at least somewhat of a step beyond what I've done before, add something new to it, and then I put it out there, and then it's for the rest of the world to decide whether or not I've done something valid.
Yeah. So, any shows in the near future you would like to mention?
Well, aside from the ones that I'd already mentioned that have already been announced,
Mm-hmm.
there'll be, for the Angelcorpse project, there'll be some shows coming up in May, and there's also going to be something in Europe, which is yet to be announced, which will be coming up at the end of February.
Oh, okay.
Which will probably be announced in the next, probably within this week.
Yeah. So, anything you would like to add?
It's great to be back playing these old songs again, and with the rehearsals that we've done so far, the stuff is dusting off really well, and we're looking to have a really good time with it, and it's going to be, bringing these songs back to what at this point might even be an entirely new generation of followers for this type of music.
Mm-hmm.
And they can get a taste of what we were doing 20 years ago and still continue to do now. And we'll see what the future holds for it coming next, rolling into the next couple of years.
All right, so thank you a lot for your time, Gene.
All right, well, thanks a lot, Paula, and have a good New Year.
Thank you.